The adoption files that were never meant to be found. The archive was never supposed to exist. At least that was what the brass plaque on the basement door suggested. No name, no agency seal, just a number that didn't match any public registry. Mara Ellison found it by accident while digitizing records for the Ministry of Social Welfare, a temporary contract that paid too little for the silence it demanded. The key was mislabeled. Cold Storage B, it read. Inside, the air smelled of dust and iron, and the shelves bowed under gray boxes stamped with dates spanning 4 decades. Every box carried the same red mark in the corner, sealed in perpetuity. Mara opened one anyway. The file inside told the story of a baby named Tomás Iñiguez, born in Valparaiso in 1983, declared orphaned after a dockside fire. Adopted 6 months later by a couple in Northern Europe. Clean, efficient, almost boring, until Mara noticed the photograph. The infant in the adoption photo wore a bracelet from a hospital that hadn't existed until 5 years later. She checked another file, and another. Different countries, different years, same handwriting on the consent forms, same social worker signature, R. Calderon, even when the worker was supposedly stationed on another continent at the same time. Mara didn't sleep that night. By morning, she had a spreadsheet mapping names, dates, and locations. Patterns emerged like bruises under skin. Children declared abandoned within hours of birth. Parents listed as deceased with no death certificates. Judges approving adoptions in batches of 50. By the end of the week, Mara understood what the archive really was. A system. International adoption, framed as humanitarian rescue, had been quietly industrialized. Children taken from hospitals, border villages, refugee camps. Identities rewritten. Paper parents invented. Real parents erased. Not violently, not dramatically, but with stamps and signatures and language that sounded kind. The files didn't just record adoptions, they recorded compliance. Mara flagged the anomaly through official channels. The response came quickly and wrong. Thank you for your diligence. These records have been reviewed previously and found to be in order. Please discontinue further examination. 2 hours later, her building access was revoked. She went anyway. That night, Mara copied everything she could onto encrypted drives. She read until her eyes burned. Testimonies from mothers who had been told their babies died, then handed sealed coffins they were forbidden to open. Internal memos discussing acceptable loss rates. Diplomatic cables noting that exposure would be politically inconvenient but survivable. One document stopped her cold. A list titled Unlocated Minors, Status Unknown. Over 12,000 names. Some had notes in the margins, possibly alive, identity altered, adoption incomplete. Others simply ended mid-sentence as if the typist had been interrupted and never returned. Mara released the files anonymously. The story broke in fragments, first a foreign newspaper, then an advocacy group, then a televised hearing where officials expressed grave concern while insisting the practices were of their time. Governments promised investigations, task forces were announced, apologies were drafted in careful, bloodless language. And then, as always, the noise began to fade. But the files did something else, too. Adults in their 40s and 50s started requesting birth records. DNA databases lit up with impossible matches. A woman in Chile found her son alive in Sweden. 2 brothers in Canada learned they had a sister in Korea. Some reunions were joyful, others were unbearable. Many parents had died never knowing the truth. Mara watched from the margins, unemployed and cautious, her name still unknown. One afternoon, an unmarked envelope appeared at her door. Inside was a photocopy of a file she had never opened, her own. She had been adopted internationally in 1989. Her birth name was crossed out in black ink, but beneath it, faint and stubborn, the letters were still legible. A note at the bottom read, "Mother searched for child,
Requests denied. Case closed. Mara sat on the floor for a long time. The archive was eventually relocated for preservation. Access was restricted again. Some officials resigned. Most did not. No one went to prison. But the files were already loose in the world, multiplying, mirrored, impossible to fully erase. They had been sealed to protect a story governments wanted forgotten, that good intentions can be weaponized, that paperwork can disappear people, and that looking away is often a policy choice. The adoption files were never meant to be found. That was precisely why they mattered.